I took a road trip with my ex before my wedding. I don't know if I am getting married anymore. I have loved this bar for as long as I can remember. We had been coming here since college, and it felt like the right place to share my news. Sam and Tyler were chatting about some new video game while Alex stared into his drink. He looked just as handsome as any day. Unfortunately, I was not supposed to think like that anymore. I was supposed to think about Dina. I was with her now. I reminded myself as I had been for the past year. I had known Dina for a year now, and this was just as good as time as any to propose to her. My friends, however, weren't thrilled. "Guys, I have something to tell you," I said, trying to sound casual. Sam and Tyler looked up curious. Alex glanced at me, his expression unreadable. "I'm going to propose to Dina." It came out more like a question than an announcement. A heavy silence fell over the table. My best friend, Alex, shifted uncomfortably. Alex and I have been friends for as long as I can remember. He had been my confidant since childhood, and our history was somewhat complicated with us dating for a bit some time back. One that no one knew about except Sam and Tyler. Dina had been part of our college gang, and back then, everything seemed to be perfect. But things changed when Dina proposed herself as my girlfriend in front of my homophobic parents, making them instantly like her. That moment had turned my relationship with Alex sour, leading to our breakup. Thankfully, Sam broke the silence. "Wow, Garret, that's big news," Sam finally said, forcing a smile. "Yeah, huge," echoed Tyler, glancing at Alex. "Thanks, guys," I replied, ignoring the tension. "I thought it'd be good to tell you first." Sam and Tyler exchanged looks before Sam spoke up. "We should go on a trip, one last adventure before you're not a free man anymore." Alex looked like he wanted to object, but Tyler jumped in. "Yeah, it'll be fun, just us, like old times." I hesitated. "I'm not sure, Dina might not like that." "Come on, Garret," Sam insisted. "It's just a few days. What could go wrong?" After a moment, I nodded. "All right, let's do it." Alex still looked reluctant, but after some more coaxing from Sam and Tyler, he finally agreed. The next weekend, we packed our bags and set off on our trip. After a week. The trip indeed was a good idea. The drive to the mountains was long, but filled with laughter and old stories. We stopped at a roadside diner for lunch, and for a moment, it felt like nothing had changed. However, things had changed. The tension between Alex and me was a constant reminder of it. We had been inseparable since childhood, but our breakup had left a void. Dina's presence in my life had driven a wedge between us, and now, as we drove to the mountains, I wondered if this trip would help heal old wounds or open new ones. The first few days were awkward. We hiked, cooked over campfires, and reminisced about old times, but there was an underlying tension that none of us could ignore. Sam and Tyler tried their best to lighten the mood, but it was clear they were hoping for more than just a fun trip. They wanted closure for Alex and me. One night, after a few too many beers around the campfire, Alex and I found ourselves alone. I don't know if that was by chance or one of Sam and Tyler's plans, but they had gone to bed, leaving us with the crackling fire and the vast starry sky. "Garret, about Dina," Alex began, his voice hesitant. I sighed. "I know you don't like her, Alex, but she makes me happy." "Does she?" Alex asked, looking at me intently. "Or are you just trying to make your parents happy?" His words stung, but they also rang true. I had never fully admitted it, but Dina's acceptance by my parents had played a big part in our relationship. I looked away, unable to meet Alex's gaze. "I don't know," I whispered. I thought she was what I needed." "And what about us?" Alex's voice was soft, almost pleading. "Did we mean nothing?" I turned back to him, seeing the pain in his eyes. "We meant everything, Alex. But I couldn't stand up to my parents. I was a coward." We sat in silence for a while, the fire crackling between us. Finally, Alex spoke again. "I miss you, Garret. Not just as a boyfriend, but as my best friend." "I miss you too," I admitted to him, and finally to myself. I never wanted things to end like this. I don't remember when exactly I slept. The last thing I remember was talking to Alex about almost everything we had kept hidden beneath our facade of everything all right for so long. The more we talked, the more I felt the old wounds opening up and starting to heal. By the next morning, it felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. The next day, we decided to explore a nearby lake that Sam had heard about from a local. The water was crystal clear, reflecting the blue sky and the surrounding trees. We rented a small rowboat. Sam and Tyler went to buy something to eat nearby, leaving us alone, laughing as we clumsily paddled around, splashing each other and enjoying the cool breeze. "This is nice," Alex commented, his voice soft as he leaned back against the boat's edge. I nodded, feeling a sense of peace settle over me. "Yeah, it is." We drifted in comfortable silence for a while, the only sound being the gentle lapping of water against the boat. Alex and I took turns rowing, laughing at our clumsy attempts to steer the boat straight. The lake was calm, and the gentle rocking of the boat was almost hypnotic. For a while, we just drifted, enjoying the peacefulness. "Want to switch places?" Alex asked with a mischievous glint in his eye. "Sure," I said, not thinking much of it. As we tried to maneuver around each other in the small boat, a sudden gust of wind caught us off guard. The boat wobbled precariously, and I felt a surge of panic. "Whoa!" I yelped, grabbing the sides of the boat. "Alex, be careful!" But it was too late. The boat tipped, and water started sloshing over the sides. My heart raced as the boat rocked violently. "Garret, it's okay," Alex said, his voice calm and reassuring. "Just hold on to me." I grabbed his arm, my knuckles white. "I'm trying." Alex's calmness was infectious. He guided us to shift our weight slowly, counteracting the motion of the boat. After a few tense moments, the boat stabilized, and we both let out a breath of relief. "See? We got this," Alex said, flashing me a reassuring smile. I nodded, my heart still pounding. "Thanks, Alex, that was close." As we settled back into our seats, I realized how the scare had brought us even closer. I couldn't help but notice how natural it felt to rely on Alex again, just like old times. For a moment, I forgot everything else and it all faded away. The past, the hurt, even Dina. It was just the two of us, together against the world. "You know," Alex said softly, breaking the silence, "you always were terrible at switching seats in boats." I laughed, feeling the tension melt away. "Yeah, I guess some things never change." We continued our ride, the earlier scare almost forgotten. As we rowed back to shore, I couldn't shake the feeling that this trip was more than just a vacation. It was a chance to rediscover what we had lost, to find our way back to each other. And for the first time in a long while, I felt hopeful. But then, "Garret," Alex said suddenly, breaking the silence. His tone was serious, and I looked directly at him. "Yeah?" He hesitated for a moment as if searching for the right words. "Do you ever think about us?" I felt my heart skip a beat, unsure of how to respond. "Sometimes," I admitted finally. "Do you?" He nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "Yeah, more than I probably should." I turned to him, my heart racing. "Alex, Before I could finish, he looked at me, his eyes filled with a mix of longing and uncertainty. "Garret, I still care about you. More than just a friend." His words were heavy. I wanted to comfort him, say something soothing, but the words got stuck in my throat like a lump and I couldn't. I swallowed hard, my mind racing with a million thoughts and emotions. "Alex," I said softly, reaching out to touch his arm. I don't know what to say." He turned to me, his expression vulnerable. "You don't have to say anything, Garret. I just needed you to know." I nodded slowly, feeling the weight of his words sinking in. "Thank you, Alex, for being honest with me." He smiled faintly, a hint of sadness in his eyes. "Always, Garret. That's what friends are for." But I knew it was more than that. There was something between us, something that had never truly gone away. As we rowed back to shore, the sun was dipping below the horizon. It seemed fitting for the moment. 3 days later. As the days passed, Alex and I continued to grow closer. We spent more time together, talking about everything and nothing. It felt like we were rediscovering each other, finding a new rhythm to our friendship. It would not be too far from the truth to say that this trip was straight out of my dreams. Dreams that have always been out of my reach. We became a lot closer than we were in the past couple of days. We continued to have late-night conversations, sneaking away from the others to talk. It was as if we were rediscovering our friendship, finding new balance. Sam and Tyler noticed the change and seemed relieved. It was the last night of our trip, and we all sat around the fire, singing, talking away happily just like the old times, and the atmosphere was much lighter than before. Sam raised his beer. "To new beginnings," he said, grinning. "To new beginnings," we echoed, clinking our bottles together. And after some time, they went to sleep in their tents, leaving me and Alex alone. The fire was nearly out. We both got up, dusting our clothes, when Alex called my name. I looked up to him, but before I could say anything, He closed the distance between us, pressing his soft lips to mine in a tentative kiss. It felt like coming home, like all the pieces were finally falling into place. I kissed him back, wrapping my hands around him like I never wanted to let go of him. When we finally pulled apart, Alex rested his forehead against mine, his breath warm against my skin. "Garret," he whispered, his voice filled with emotion. "I love you." Tears welled up in my eyes, overflowing with happiness and relief. "I love you too, Alex." For a moment, everything felt perfect, but as reality crashed back in, a heavy weight settled on my chest. I pulled back slightly, trying to gather my thoughts. "Alex," I began, my voice trembling. "We can't do this." He looked at me, confusion and hurt flickering in his eyes. "What do you mean, Garret?" I took a deep breath, struggling to find the right words. "I love you. I never stopped loving you, but I have to go back home. I have to marry Dina." His face fell, and he took a step back, the warmth between us replaced by a cold emptiness. "Why? If you love me, why marry her?" I looked away, unable to meet his gaze. "Because I can't do this to my parents. They would never accept me as gay. They've already planned everything, and the wedding is in 2 days. I can't back out now." Alex's eyes filled with tears, and he shook his head in disbelief. "So you're just going to marry her, even though you don't love her?" "I don't have a choice," I said, my voice breaking. "My parents, they mean everything to me. I can't disappoint them." He took a shaky breath, his shoulders slumping. "Garret, you're only going to make yourself miserable, and her too. She deserves someone who truly loves her." "I know," I whispered, the weight of my decision crushing me. "But I can't bring myself to break their hearts. They would never understand." Alex reached out gently, cupping my face in his hands. "Garret, you have to live for yourself, not for them." I closed my eyes, leaning into his touch, wishing more than anything that things could be different. "I wish I could, Alex, I really do, but I can't. I just can't." He dropped his hand, stepping back, his expression filled with sorrow. "Then I guess this is goodbye." Tears streamed down my face as I nodded, the pain of our parting almost unbearable. "I'm so sorry, Alex." He turned away, wiping at his eyes, and didn't look back. As he walked away, my heart shattered into a million pieces. I watched him go, knowing that this time I had truly lost him. I don't remember for how long I just stood there looking into the darkness that seemed to resemble my life a lot. I mean, that's how it will be without my Alex in it. Eventually, I made my way back to my tent, feeling completely drained. I lay there staring at the ceiling, thoughts racing through my mind. The happiness and relief I had felt moments ago were now replaced by a deep sense of sorrow and regret. As I finally drifted off to sleep, I knew that the next few days were going to be some of the hardest of my life. I was about to marry a woman I didn't love, to keep up appearances and avoid disappointing my parents. But in doing so, I was losing the person I truly loved, the person who had always been there for me. The next day. The trip ended far too quickly than I would have wanted, and soon we were packing up and heading back to the city. The car ride was silent. Alex didn't say a word to me. He sat in the back seat, staring out the window, lost in his thoughts. Sam and Tyler tried to make small talk, but even they couldn't break the heavy silence that settled over us. When we finally reached the city, we all went our separate ways. Alex didn't even look at me as he got out of the car. He just grabbed his bag and walked away, not even bothering to say goodbye. It hurt more than I could put into words, but I knew I was the reason for this, and maybe this was the right thing to do. As I drove home, the image of Alex walking away kept replaying in my head, and my heart ached with the weight of what I'd lost. But I had to push those feelings aside. After all, I had a wedding to prepare for. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw my parents' car parked outside. I took a deep breath, trying to compose myself. I couldn't let them see how torn up I was inside. As soon as I walked through the door, I was greeted with the sound of laughter and animated conversation. My parents and Dina were sitting at the dining table, surrounded by wedding magazines and checklists. They looked up and smiled when they saw me. "Garret, you're back!" my mom exclaimed, getting up to give me a hug. "How was the trip?" "It was fine," I said, forcing a smile. "Just a nice break before the big day." Dina came over and hugged me tightly. "I missed you," she said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "We've been going over all the wedding details. Everything is almost set." I hugged her back, trying to push down the guilt. "That's great," I said, trying to sound enthusiastic. We all sat down at the table and they launched into a detailed discussion about the wedding plans. My mom was talking about the seating arrangements, my dad was going over the catering menu, and Dina was excitedly discussing the flower arrangements. I nodded and smiled at the right moments, but my mind was elsewhere. However, all I could think about was Alex, the way he had kissed me by the dying fire, the way he had confessed his love, and the way I had let him walk away. It was like a bad dream I couldn't wake up from. My heart was heavy with regret and longing. "Garret, are you even listening?" My mom's voice cut through my thoughts, bringing me back to the present. "Huh? Oh yeah, sorry," I said, trying to focus. "What were you saying?" "I was asking if you have any preferences for the music at the reception," she said, looking concerned. "You seem distracted." "I'm just a bit tired from the trip," I lied, forcing another smile. "Whatever you guys decide is fine with me." Dina reached out and took my hand. "Are you sure you're okay? You seem a bit off." I squeezed her hand, trying to reassure her. "I'm fine, really, just a lot on my mind." We continued discussing the wedding plans, but I couldn't shake the feeling of emptiness inside me. Every time I looked at Dina, I felt a pang of guilt. She was so excited about our future, and here I was thinking about someone else, someone who I had loved deeply and lost because I couldn't stand up to my parents. Hours passed, and eventually, my parents decided to head home. Dina stayed awake for a while, wanting to spend more time with me. We sat on the couch, and she rested her head on my shoulder. "I'm so excited for our wedding, Garret," she said softly. "I can't wait to start our life together." I kissed the top of her head, feeling a lump in my throat. "Me too," I said, but my voice barely left my throat. We sat in silence for a while before she left to go to bed, and I was left all alone with the weight of my decision pressing down on me. I knew that marrying Dina was what my parents wanted, what society expected of me, but my heart belonged to Alex, and I couldn't deny that any longer. I stared at the ceiling, feeling the tears well up in my eyes. I had made my choice, and now I had to live with it. The wedding was in 2 days, and I felt like... No, actually, I knew I was walking toward a future that wasn't mine. The next day. The morning of the wedding was as chaotic as happy, a whirlwind of activity. My parents were bustling around, making sure everything was perfect. The house was filled with the scent of fresh flowers, and the sound of cheerful chatter echoed through the halls. I sat in my room, staring at my reflection in the mirror. I was dressed in my suit, every detail well planned and arranged. I should have felt excited, but all I felt was a hollow feeling and sense of dread. I kept thinking about Alex and our trip over and over again. I lost count of the times I had replayed the kiss by the fire and the way I had let him walk away in my head. My heart ached with the weight of it all. I tried to push those thoughts aside, but they kept creeping back in, making it hard to breathe. My dad knocked on the door and stepped in, his face beaming with pride. "You look great, son. Ready for the big day?" I forced a smile. "Yeah, I guess so." He gave me a reassuring pat on the back. "Everything's going to be perfect. Dina is a wonderful girl. You two are going to be so happy together." "Thanks, Dad," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He left to check on the final arrangements, and I was alone again. I glanced at my phone, half expecting a message from Alex, but there was nothing. I hadn't heard from him since the trip. The silence was eating me up. A soft knock at the door pulled my thoughts back to the present. It was Sam, my best man. He walked in, a concerned look on his face. "You okay, Garret?" I nodded, though I didn't feel okay at all. "Just nervous, I guess." Sam sat down next to me. "It's normal to feel nervous, but if you're having second thoughts, it's not too late to change your mind." I looked at him, my heart pounding. "I don't know, Sam. I just feel like I'm making a huge mistake." He sighed, placing a hand on my shoulder. "You have to follow your heart, Garret. Don't just do this just because it's what's expected of you." I nodded, but the words didn't bring me any comfort. The weight of my parents' expectations and the pressure to fit into their perfect image were overwhelming. I wanted to be the good son they had always wanted, but at what cost? The time came to head to the church. As we drove there, my mind was racing. I kept replaying my moments with Alex, the love we had shared, the future we had dreamed of, and now I was about to marry someone else, someone I didn't truly love. A few hours later, the church was filled with family and friends. The soft notes of the wedding march played as Dina walked down the aisle in her white gown. She smiled at me, her eyes filled with love and excitement. I tried to smile back, but I'm not sure it actually came out right. I stood at the altar, my heart pounding in my chest. The officiant began the ceremony, his voice a distant hum in my ears. I could feel the eyes of everyone in the room on me, waiting for the moment I would declare my love for Dina. But all I could think about was Alex. All I could see was Alex, who stood quietly on the side with my best man. Of course he'd be here. Even if it kills him, he is the only person I know who would do his part no matter what the cost. So there he was, standing tall, doing his part well as my best friend. The officiant looked at me, his eyes kind and expectant. "Do you, Garret, take Dina to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, for better or worse, as long as you both shall live?" I took a deep breath, my mind racing. This was it, the moment of truth. I glanced at Dina, her eyes shining with hope and love. Then I looked at my parents, their faces filled with pride. I couldn't do it. I couldn't lie to them, to Dina, to myself. "I don't," I said, my voice trembling but clear. A gasp rippled through the hall. Dina's smile faltered, and she looked shocked, to say the least. Confusion and hurt flashed in her eyes. My parents' faces turned pale with shock, and Alex, well, he just stood there stunned. "I can't do this," I continued, my voice gaining strength. "I'm so sorry, Dina. I have tried so hard to be what everyone wants me to be. To be a good son, a good fiancé, but I can't marry you. My heart belongs to someone else." Tears welled up in Dina's eyes. "Garret, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that I love Alex," I said, the words spilling out in a rush. "I've always loved him, and I can't live a lie anymore. I can't pretend to be someone I'm not." I turned to the congregation, my voice steady. "I'm sorry to all of you. I know this is not what you expected, but I have to be true to myself. I have to follow my heart." With that, I turned and ran down the aisle and rushed towards Alex. He was shocked, his eyes widening in surprise. "Garret, what are you doing?" I reached him, breathless and filled with emotion. "I can't do it, Alex. I can't marry Dina. Because I love you. I've always loved you." I took his hands in mine, looking into his eyes. "Alex, will you take me in sickness and in health, in joy and in sorrow, for better or worse, as long as we both shall live?" Tears filled Alex's eyes as he smiled, the love and relief evident on his face. "Yes, Garret. Yes, I do." I pulled him into my arms, pressing my lips to his in a passionate kiss. The world around us seemed to fade away, and for that moment, it was just the two of us wrapped in each other's embrace. It took me some time to understand that you cannot forcefully love anyone, no matter how hard you try. Walking away from the church hand in hand with Alex felt like a fresh start. The parents naturally weren't able to accept me for what I was, but I knew it all along. The support from Sam and Tyler helped us navigate the chaos that followed. Moving my things out of the apartment I shared with Dina was tough, but my friends made it bearable. I hope someday Dina will find it in her heart to forgive me, and my parents will be able to accept me for me. However, that is for the future to tell. For now, with Alex by my side, I felt ready for whatever the future held. It was the beginning of a new chapter. Would you choose family or love? Thanks for watching. Consider liking and subscribing to become part of our Rainbow Force, and stay wholesome.